The oldest thing in my house wasn't me. It was the clock. For 28 years, I dusted its carved walnut frame every Sunday afternoon without ever wondering why it felt heavier than it should. Then, 3 months after my 65th birthday, I lifted it to clean the shelf beneath it, heard something slide inside, and discovered that time had been hiding a secret from me longer than most marriages survive. If you've ever convinced yourself that you missed your only chance at love, stay with me. Before this story ends, you'll understand that the deepest regrets are rarely born from rejection. They are born from silence. I know because I spent more than 40 years believing I had made the sensible choice, only to learn that I had spent my life measuring happiness with the wrong clock dot. My name is Eleanor. I'm 65 years old, and I've lived in the same white house for 39 years. My garden has won neighborhood awards 3 times. I raised 2 successful children, never missed a mortgage payment, and balanced every family budget down to the last dollar. People often told me I had built a beautiful life. What they never saw was how quiet that beautiful life became. When I was 23, everyone believed I was the luckiest woman in town. I was engaged to Richard, a dependable accountant with kind manners, steady income, and a clear plan for the future. My parents adored him. My friends envied me. Every wedding invitation that arrived in the mail reminded me ours would soon follow. Only one person looked at me as though he could see the fear behind my smile. His name was Daniel. He worked in the public library repairing old books. His hands were always stained with glue and ink, and his old pickup truck rattled every time it turned the corner. He didn't have much money. He couldn't promise me a large house or expensive vacations. Instead, he asked questions nobody else ever asked. What makes you feel alive? What would you do if nobody expected anything from you? The first time he asked, I laughed because I didn't know how to answer. Looking back, I realized that was the moment I should have paid attention. Richard loved the future we were planning. Daniel loved the woman standing in front of him. At 23, I confused security with love. Everyone told me love would grow after marriage. Stability mattered more than butterflies. Passion faded anyway. I heard those words so often that eventually they sounded like wisdom. So I married Richard. The wedding photographs are beautiful. Every smile looks genuine. Only I know that, on the drive home after the reception, I watched the library disappear in the rearview mirror and felt as though I had buried something without attending its funeral. Life moved exactly as everyone promised. We bought a house. 2 children arrived within 5 years. We celebrated birthdays, paid bills, hosted Thanksgiving dinners, and took the same summer vacation almost every July. From the outside, we looked like the picture of success. Inside the house, conversations slowly became schedules. Did you pay the insurance? The washing machine needs repair. Your doctor's appointment is Tuesday. We spoke every day. We rarely talked. Richard wasn't a bad man. That's what made everything harder. He worked hard, never raised his voice, loved our children, and did everything society expected of a husband. He simply stopped seeing me. Somewhere between raising children and planning retirement, we became co-workers managing the same household. One winter evening, nearly 18 years after our wedding, I drove past the library on my way home. I saw Daniel locking the front door. Snow had begun falling, covering his shoulders with tiny white flakes. For one brief second, our eyes met through my windshield. He smiled, not because he expected anything. Because he remembered me, I almost stopped the car. Instead, I pressed the accelerator. That decision lasted less than 5 seconds. Its consequences lasted decades. The years continued passing with remarkable efficiency. Birthdays came and went. The children left for college. Grandchildren arrived. Richard retired. We filled our calendar but emptied our conversations. Then, one autumn morning, Richard suffered a heart attack while trimming the hedge. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. People hugged me at the funeral. You were such a wonderful couple. You had a good life together. You have so many beautiful memories. I nodded because grieving widows are expected to nod. But after everyone left, I stood alone in the living room listening to the old walnut clock tick louder than ever before. For 7 years, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I thought I was holding on to Richard. I had no idea someone else had left part of himself inside it. 3 months after turning 65, I decided to move the furniture and repaint the living room. While lifting the clock from the wall, I heard a soft thump inside its wooden case. At first, I assumed a loose screw had fallen. When I opened the back panel, a folded yellow envelope slipped into my hands. My name was written across the front, not in Richard's handwriting, in Daniel's. My knees gave way before I even opened it. I sat on the floor. The room was perfectly silent. Inside was a single letter dated May 18th, 1984, the week before my wedding. It began with 7 words. "If you're reading this, time finally won." My hands started shaking so violently that I had to place the paper on my lap. Daniel wrote that he had visited my parents' house while I was away. My father had politely, but firmly told him to leave and never return. Before leaving, Daniel noticed the old clock waiting to be hung after the wedding. Knowing I loved antique furniture, he hid one letter inside. He wrote that he never wanted to destroy my future. He only wanted me to know the truth. "I loved you enough to let you choose another life," he wrote. "But if, years from now, you ever wonder whether anyone truly saw you, remember this. I did. You never needed to become someone easier to love. You already were." Tears blurred every sentence. Then I reached the final paragraph. "I hope Richard gives you everything I couldn't. But if he doesn't, promise me one thing. Don't spend your life pretending that quiet is the same as peace." I cried harder than I had at my husband's funeral. Not because I wished I had married Daniel. Because I finally understood what I had lost. Not a man. A version of myself. The woman who laughed without checking whether anyone approved. The woman who dreamed before calculating risks. The woman who believed love should make her feel seen instead of simply safe. The next morning, I drove to the old library. It had become a community art center years earlier. An elderly volunteer recognized Daniel's name. "He passed away 5 years ago," she said softly. "Cancer." She pointed toward a small memorial garden behind the building. I sat on a wooden bench for almost 2 hours. There was no dramatic speech, no miracle, no second chance. Only wind moving through the trees exactly the way it had on the afternoon we first met. For the first time in decades, I stopped asking myself whether I had chosen the wrong man. Instead, I asked a different question. Why had I spent 40 years believing love and security could never exist together? That question changed everything. Regret isn't a prison. It's a teacher that charges an unbearable price. Since that day, I've started saying the words I used to swallow. I tell my children I love them before ending every phone call. I apologize when I'm wrong instead of waiting for pride to shrink. I invite neighbors inside instead of pretending I prefer being alone. I laugh loudly enough that the empty rooms finally answer with something besides silence. The old clock still hangs in my living room. It no longer reminds me that time was stolen. It reminds me that truth can wait for decades, but it never stops waiting. If you're listening to this while thinking of someone you never called, someone you never forgave, or someone you quietly stopped loving because life became busy, don't assume there will always be another season. Silence has a way of becoming permanent. One conversation can change a life. One letter can change 40 years. I still read Daniel's letter on the first Sunday of every month, not because I'm trapped in the past, because it reminds me of a lesson I paid half a lifetime to learn. The greatest love you lose is often the one you never allowed yourself to live. And every time the old clock chimes, I smile instead of crying. It isn't counting down what I have left. It's reminding me that every hour still given to me deserves honesty. Time never betrayed me. My silence did.